So the first speaker of the afternoon is Professor Juri Engelbrecht, who is a distinguished mathematician from the Technology University of Tallinn, Estonia, and is also a member of our academy, and especially a past president of ALLEA. He will speak on academies and information-rich society. Please, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be here in Turin, and especially in this hall, which is so rich about all the knowledge. And it's not the first time I'm giving a talk here, and it's every time that I really enjoy being here. And what is very special for today, I see also the young people in the audience, and that is very important that the young people are also somehow related to the events in the academy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to speak about academies and the roles in the society, then some examples, and then the final remarks as usual. And I would like to start that whether the crisis or not, academies are academies. So these are the strongholds of knowledge over the centuries, but the roles of the academies have been changing. Yesterday, Professor Loprieno explained exactly that what has happened over this, all this, not only the years, but the former centuries, and what we actually face today. And academies certainly are not alone. What is important, it was this morning we had the excellent talk about university here in Turin, Polytechnico, that has been really thinking globally about many problems. And the next talk was about industrial attitudes, so that we cover from the academies and the universities and the industrial part to put it together. Well, if we speak about research, then certainly that research is always looking ahead. Whatever the period has been from the very past, in Museum in Alexandria, for example, or later the academies here in Italy, or then later on the Leopoldina and the Accademia di Scienze, and then Royal Societies, always just looking ahead. And then we have really to think that what are the roles of the academies. First, academies were the meeting places for eminent scientists, and they were discussing the new findings. This was actually very important for the 17th, 18th century. That was really something that pushed science ahead. Now the roles are now different. There are challenges. We have the traditions also, if you look around here, that what is embedded into all these books, that this old knowledge, but the new ideas, because the academies actually, the members of the academies are the best minds in the country or in the region. So it depends. Academies are also, as you know, different in bigger countries. There are several academies. In smaller countries, there is just one academy, and the history is rich and certainly very interesting if we think about that. In ALLEA, we have been also a couple of meetings about this historical part, and that's always a pleasure to look how the ideas have been progressing. But now the world is certainly changing. Global problems. And the global problems means that there are societal and also political demands. We would like to really to pay more attention to societal demands and how society, but certainly the policy and the policy makers somehow do not follow exactly what this is meant in science. And there are so many challenges. So whatever we think about the energy, climate, natural disaster, poverty, so how society could behave in this information-rich situation, so that we really have to understand it. And academies, as multidisciplinary institutions, are in this sense the best places to come to discuss and to tell the world what could be done in the future. And the main task in this sense is the knowledge management. It's not just simply that we have the ideas from one field or from another field in physics, in chemistry, in medical sciences or technical sciences, what we shall do with this knowledge. And this is something that we really have to think about, that, so that, to my mind, this knowledge management is really very important. And I always remember, it was about 20 years ago, well, a little bit less, it was a meeting in Warsaw to mark the centennial from Marie and Pierre Curie. And it was Joseph Rotblat, the Nobel Peace Prize awardee, who said very clearly, more knowledge means also more responsibility. And that makes the role of academies and universities and scientists just in whole really think about that. We are responsible. We are responsible that this new knowledge and that could be communicated, could be used, could be explained, and all that what's in this nowadays in the society. So this is something that we have to understand, what has been obtained and what could be obtained by research. And now we come to the role of the academies. In general, certainly, that as research institutions, they foster research generally and locally. Academies are different because it's historically has been that some academies have got the research institutes, some have not. Some run research projects, some behave in a different way. But one is really very typical. The academies are very eager to cooperate. And that is something that ALLEA has been doing, and also the other organizations. I'm going to mention them in a minute. So that this is just from the general viewpoint. But now we come to this societal role. If we ask people just from the street, what is academy and what's the use of academy, if I may say so. And this is exactly nowadays communication and explanatory role. This is the knowledge management, meaning that we have to communicate, to explain that what we actually, what are the scientific findings, and what does it, what do they mean for the society? And this is one of the most important roles, what I think, for the academies just today. And the second very important role is the advisory role. The advisory role means that you know, well, first, whom to advise? Advice is either given or asked. And the government sometimes do not ask advice. In some countries, the system has been, well, really worked out. The US National Academy, for example, has got in their statutes already the need. The National Academy should advise the government. So it's written in the statutes. In other countries, it's not so clear, but nevertheless, there are several these sort of possibilities. So that this is something that we really have to think about. And then, what is the role of the academies with this knowledge management? We have to really to stress the freedom of research and all the ethical aspects in it. ALLEA has been, from the very beginning, when it was launched in 1994, it started immediately studies on ethical aspects. And now in Europe, actually the codes of conduct, even the last one was actually asked from the ALLEA. The European Commission asked ALLEA to write up again the code of conduct for scientists, which is taken now as an official document. So this is something that is really important. And I pointed out also one more, this sort of bullet point here. It's a science education. Academies are not teaching in general. That's clear. It's a role of the universities. But science education means not just preparing the new PhDs, the new scientists. Science education means educating the society to understand what does it mean, what is the evidence-based decision, the scientifically grounded, what is a critical thinking. And that is needed not only for scientists, it's certainly needed for policymakers, just to understand, for journalists, just to press the society or the government or the scientists themselves, just to get forward. And this is again that's something that ALLEA has been doing. When was it? 7 or 8 years ago, or more, even 10 years ago, we had a special conference on science education. Exactly that, and some examples are very good. In Germany, for example, in France, in Norway, this is something that the academies take care of. And we had also in ALLEA, we had a working group on science education. So this is also something that we have to think about. It's not so easy always, that's quite clear. Society is a very complex mechanism, and the complexity is unpredictable sometimes. There are threats in the society, for example, tensions, disinformation. That we know that especially in the social media, that what kind of things you can discover there, and if you open online news and all that, the fake news, polarization, that's something that the ideas contrary to each other and all that. So that this is something that we really have to think about. There are threats to freedom of scientific research. In Europe, is maybe not so evident, but unfortunately, we have some kind of information from some countries where it is said that no, you can't go on with, for example, research on gender balance or whatsoever, and I'm not going to name the countries, but this is something that is alarming, that we have to understand what is research and what is really needed. And the academies are something the institution who are able to really to explain why this is needed. Inside the research, we create ourselves a little bit this sort of tension, and this is as the Dutch publicist Jan Welterop has mentioned, as called katataxephilia. It's a love for ranking. So that, well, citation indices, age indices, so it's so good, and all that sort of thing. But society asked, so what? You could have some kind of very high indices there, but what is the use of all this research? And this also creates some kind of tensions. We certainly, I am for quality. I'm always, I've been for quality of research, but this is something that it can't be measured by simply the numbers. And if we think now, for example, the very good reports from CERN, 3,000 authors, 3,000 authors, one paper, excellent result. But statistics takes it all at the face value. Everybody got some checking that then is cited and all that, and these indices grow. I don't know. So that this is something that we have to really to be aware of ourselves. And certainly, what is also important that in society, the usual question is, we want results immediately. In research, we know that it takes time. We haven't got the answers to all the questions, especially to complicated questions. And it takes time to really to go through the analysis, to prepare the results, and we have to be responsible for that. And then we can give the answer, not just simply that asked and then this is the answer and then go on. So that in this sense, it's really, we have to really to be pretty careful. And sometimes it's overestimated. For example, I have asked also people who are very fond of innovation that, do you know what is so-called Amara's law? It's a Roy Amara, the former president of Palo Alto Research Center, who said that we try to overestimate the technological innovation in short run. We are very fond of this will change the world. And then in the long run, we understand that it was not like that. It comes to the usual sort of balance, and this is something that we really have to also to be aware and to take about. Well, now going on, science advice mechanisms. This is the one of the important tasks also from the academies, links with the government. These are a little bit, tricky questions, because in some countries they are pretty well established. In some countries, it's the governments come and go and changing, and it depends upon the policymakers whether they are eager to understand. It's a part of science education, and this is something that we really have to think about. Science councils in bigger countries, there are several science councils. They could prepare programs, and if they are able really to get the funding, they would really to push research to that direction. What I'm looking, I live in Estonia, I'm looking, for example, to Finland, who is a very good country in this sense on the science funding, and then the Finnish Research Council as almost every year they have this new program, and they are able to get some kind of funding from the government for that, just to establish the new trends. Now, the system of advisors. What does it mean to advise? Well, what we did, for example, in my, Estonia is a very small country, that we have pushed, many years, and now almost all the ministries have got the position of the scientific advisor. And we try to really to keep this body from the various ministries, somehow related to also not to work for the ministries only, but to also to be related, for example, to the academy. We just simply invite them incorporate to all the meetings, just to tell them that this is for a global meeting, this is for a special meeting and all that, so just to understand it. And certainly that this information system, like the usual, the conferences and publications and so on are so important. Now, if we come now to the global advice mechanism, then these international organizations, I'm going to speak about in a minute, but in European, there is a science advice mechanism, SAM. And this is what is very important. We have this SAPEA. Again, the acronym means here Scientific Advice for Policy by European Academies. And this SAPEA is made of 5 institutions: ALLEA, Accademia Europea, EASAC, European Academy Science Advisory Council, Consortium for Technical Academies, and Consortium for Medical Academies, European thing. And this is really quite special, this sort of possibility to advise the Commission. And the Commission, by this SAM unit, is eager, at least it was up to now. We don't know what will happen in the future when the new people step in. This is something that it's really important. And as I said, ALLEA has got this is related to SAPEA. And again, it wasn't so easy, if I may say so, that because I started myself when I was a president of ALLEA, I tried to put the institutions together, but it was a little bit too early. And I am so pleased now that actually Günther Stock, who couldn't attend our conference, the president of ALLEA this time, and Gerd Klossing, the president of Accademia Europea, managed to really to put it into the action. That this is something that is really quite good. There are, well, the very first report was food from oceans, and now European Academy has preparing the report Making Sense of Science. So this is really that we are expecting that it's quite a good overview. Now EASAC, that is Science Advisory Council. This is a bottom-up initiative of the academies of the European Union, and the reports are really made of the best minds in the academies, covering mostly environment, energy, and health. So that these 3, the areas, not all, as we understand, but the reports are actually all online and available, are really very, very good. Now, IAP, Inter-Academy Panel. This means that this is the organization of all the world academies, so that from every country, then one academy is a member of the IAP. Again, the reports, and one that such kind of report was, well, I'm going to speak about it, about some kind of, you know, very short think paper, mostly the roles of the academies, merit-based academies, what they should do in the contemporary world. Then the World Academy, World Academy of Art and Science, with this acronym WAAS. This is the analysis of global problems. The academy actually was founded according to the ideas of Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer. It was actually launched a couple of years after Einstein passed out, And this is also the very special think tank thinking about the global problems. And then also about the contemporary education, which is they have the subunit World University Consortium. It was exactly, again, the idea of Albert Einstein once upon a time well, more than 60 years ago, that this should be somehow done globally, the educational problems analyzed. And certainly there are many more think tanks, and the role of academies is really important. Now there's a couple of words about this IIP last paper. It was on the merit-based academies, and actually the working group who prepared it was called Improving Scientific Input to Global Policy Making. So this is, again, the role of the academies. And what they have pointed out that I listed here a couple of these bullet points here only, that the balance of local and global problems. This is something that was very clearly also explained by the rector of Politecnico, that it's environmental problems are not only local, although they are important, but it's a global problems. We have to balance them. And we really have to think in the academies about the quality and increasing, this time, inclusivity. This inclusivity has always been one of the leading factors for ALLEA. Then it was also mentioned during the couple of talks about that the academies have got this disciplinary interaction, the multidisciplinarity, and this is exactly important. It's not only that you have to think about one field or another field, or simply science in the Anglo-American understanding, which is there's natural sciences, excluding humanities and social sciences. They must be together. This is absolutely clear. And then certainly the service mission that was explained also in previous talks, and I tried to pick up a couple of problems, and certainly this contemporary world, the rationality in the post-truth world. So now some examples actually. So that this, what I told just now, it was about the merit-based academies in the 21st century. The think piece, this was made public about half a year ago, and you can get it from online. And then I think that the last ALLEA annual report is really very rich of such all kind of ideas, including also the strategic priorities that is also you can get from the copy there, and this is also that what is really very briefly listed what academies are doing. That the World Academy always publishes newsletters, and again this is the question is about the paradigms changes, whatever the paradigms are in the educations, the classical education, or in the economy, so that this is trying to get something in addition. In this general policy, science policy thing, I think that the Austrian Academy has been very good, so that they had something similar conferences 2 years ago about the freedom of scientific research, and there are these political and societal demands. I think that this is, again, a very good overview about various problems, about the facing these threats and all the societal demands. And then, last but not least, last year we had also the similar conference in my own academy, Estonian Academy of Sciences. Professor Lopriano was also one of the speakers, and it was on the advisory role of the academies in the information-rich society. This is something that was inspiration also for my talk today, because we really collected people from the European Commission, from Accademia Europea, from LERU, the League of the European Research Universities, which is very active organization uniting 23 best research universities in Europe. And there, these reports are really something that it's useful to read, all online available. So this seems that these examples, and now the final remarks. First, scientific advice doesn't mean that well, we give an advice and then we sit down again and think. Scientific advice is not one-time input. This we have to think all the time, and many academies do that. And the second point is that the scientific communications means also all contemporary possibilities. We are certainly accustomed to publications, or our journals and our conferences, but the social media is also very important, especially for young people. And then certainly we have to really to think that about this open mind and active engagement. These are the long and established traditions in the academies. And we have to simply to ask that have we used all our potential? And we simply, exactly as Joseph Rotblat said, we have the responsibility to use it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the main points of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Professor Engelbrecht, for your nice talk. I think it's better if we have questions after every talk and not at the end, as it is written in the general program. So if there are questions, Professor Lopriano.
Thank you very much, Juri, for this global picture of the problems that are going on. May I make a comment on what you were saying about science advice mechanism? Our experience is that we experience now a little bit of a crisis of multilateralism to the advantage of bilateralism. Yeah. What I mean is that in trying to develop these forms of mechanisms, it proves a good idea to have one leading academy. Yeah. And gathering efforts around this academy, rather than trying to bring all the actors together. To a certain extent, it's what's happening in this series of events like the one that we're experiencing yesterday and today, but also in some of the topics that we were discussing. I'm thinking now of data governance for Europe. It has proven a good idea to have a lead structure. In the specific case, it was the Royal Society of London, and then to bring the other academies around this kind of first input by a lead academy, rather than trying to go, really the democratic bottom-up way of bringing all the speakers or the experts together.
Yeah, thank you very much. I fully agree with that, because it's when we have one leading academy, then they are prepared somehow to take it very seriously, and there are several cooperation agreements, and it helps quite a lot. Actually, that EASAC has been somehow using this sort of this attitude for a long time already. And now for Sabine, I think it's also exactly what is needed.
Any more questions? If not, so thank you once more to Professor Engelbrecht.
Thank you very much.